Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of My Name is Dad. I am your host, Brandon Benson, and I believe we are on part 10 of the Who I Am series, the mini-series. You might be able to hear Lulu scratching herself in the background. That's okay. But let's quickly talk about the sponsor, which is myself, which is Point B Grading and Turfcraft Maintenance, LLC. I'm a landscape contractor, so I provide a lot of laser grading service. I have a dual slope laser. I just did some work for some of the spring training complexes around here. I do a lot of the infields, and I've done some of the warning tracks and outfields and all that stuff. But there's other things I can grade. There's other landscape projects I can do, irrigation-wise, all that stuff. Look us up at pointbgrading.com, and you can send us an email at pointbgrading@gmail.com. All right. We are on part 10, I believe, and the last where we left off, I believe my first son, Mr. Brody Benson, was born. And we were still in Hanford, and I was still working for the Visalia Rawhide full time. Miss White was a teacher at one of the local middle schools, and it became apparent to me quickly once I had a child that it was like, that medical insurance and retirement and medical benefits and all those things, they seem kind of important now. Where, again, before, it was pretty much like, you're not taking that money out of my paycheck. That's like beer money, why would I need medical insurance? I only had my gallbladder taken out, So that's what kind of, and I always kind of knew that I would move on from Visalia, that I would not stay there forever. I wanted to move on to bigger and better places. Wasn't sure what that was. I don't know if it would be football or soccer or baseball or what it would be, but I knew that I would be moving on somewhere. And that was pretty much understood between me and Mrs. White, even when we got married, that Visalia is probably, at least for the minor league team there, not where I'm going to end up. So what happens is me and Miss White, we had talked about some places that possibly we would want to move. We didn't necessarily want to go to Alabama, or Arkansas, but we kind of said like, oh, here's some cities that Miss White would be interested in moving to, and I would too, and definitely Phoenix, Arizona was definitely on the list. And I knew that Phoenix had a lot of spring training, so I knew there would be a lot of opportunities down here, and there are. If you want to work in the world of baseball, whether it's for a municipality, like a city worker, or, through the team on a private basis, there's both those opportunities are down here. So I do get an interview. I start putting my resume out there. Son's born. We did one more year with one more baseball season with the Rawhide, but I was, doing my, I was putting my resume out there and all that stuff. And I had graduated from the College of the Sequoias with my landscape management associate degree. I was pretty proud of that. And then for taking care of Brody, so Brody went to daycare as soon as Miss White decided to go back to work. I did. So Brody was born in September of 2010. So I went back to work. I took 2 weeks off, and I went back to work. And it was the off season, so I did a lot. I got ready for the overseed and just cleaning things up and getting the budget ready and all these things for the next season. Miss White went back after, I believe, her 6 or 7 weeks, whatever she did. And Brody went to daycare. We found this, I think her name was Miss Sylvia. And she was like, her husband was in the military, and she was like super strict. She ran a tight ship, I tell you that, but she was super cool and super fun. And she would wake up early especially because she had a lot of teachers that went there, and she would let the teachers drop their kids off early, before they had to get to school and all those things. And I always, sometimes I would take Brody if I needed to, and I always picked up Brody when I got off of work. I still pretty much to this day pick up my kids from school when I get off of work. It's basically been doing that for 14 years, and it continues on. Now, one of the things was that I did take Brody and all of our kids, both our kids, to their their doctor visits and all that stuff. And we had a really fun, kind of like an old school doctor. And he was like from India or something, but he was the coolest dude ever. And, we would take him in and, for like our routine checks, Brody and stuff. And he would like always be like, oh, so happy to see us. And, oh, the little baby, and we would take him in because we were nervous first time parents. And I would take him in, oh, he's coughing, Brody's coughing. And he would always examine the baby. He was like, examining Brody. And then he would look at me and he'd go, this baby's okay. Like, okay, good. I said there was only one time that he didn't do that. And I took Brody in. He was real sick. And we were like, man, this kid is coughing, sick. And this was the one time he looks over the baby and he's like, this baby is sick. It's like, yes, I know. And then, but he was like real serious. Like, if this baby is coughing in the middle of the night and he looks like he's having a hard time breathing, you go straight to Valley Children's Hospital. I was like, okay, yes, I got it. So that night, and Brody is probably, a couple months old. He's like 6 months, maybe even not that. This was probably like winter time of 2010, and he wakes us up and he's crying, and I just go in there and I see that this Brody's coughing and looks like he's having a hard time breathing. So, I just start like getting my clothes on and stuff, and I'm like, all right, here we go, And, Miss White's like, what are you doing? I'm like, we're taking him to Valley Children's Hospital. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. You weren't at the doctor. I didn't, this is what we're going to do. So then she's freaking out. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so then that time we went up to the doctor, and this is one of the times where we went to the hospital and he was diagnosed with RSV, which is, some sort of breathing sort of cough, cold thing. I don't know. But RSV, look it up. It's pretty common in kids, but it can be serious, So he had to do like a lot of breathing treatments and stuff. We had to spend like 2 nights up in the hospital there. But this was one of the maybe only times that I had to like leave. I had to leave the hospital to go do something at work. It was like something that was already pre-planned, and I was like, I just have to be there for this, Oh, I remember Miss White, when I got back, she just lit me up that how dare I leave our child in the hospital and you left us her, blah, 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 blah. But yet, I 100% believe that Miss White would totally miss going to the hospital, not take her child to the doctor so she could go to work. That was one of my red flags, my grievances was that I've always believed that Miss White would put work above sometimes her own family, just like craziness like that. So going back, I ended up interviewing with the Goodyear, Arizona, the Goodyear Spring Training Complex, which is actually, it's city owned and operated. So the city of Goodyear actually leases the facility to the Cincinnati Reds and the Cleveland Guardians. And the employees there, except for in the clubhouses where the teams lease those buildings, all the groundskeepers and maintenance guys are all city employees. So technically, I was a city employee for the city of Goodyear, which worked out well because I knew I'd get those benefits for my kids, especially after my son had RSV and I had a gallbladder taken out, and those things seemed kind of important. So what happens is, my parents used to come down to the NASCAR race every year at the Phoenix Raceway up here, which is in Avondale, but it's really, really close to the Goodyear Spring Training Complex. And when I got the job, I had to come down. I got the job like in October of like 2011 or end of September 2011. And it was agreed upon that I was going to move out, Thanksgiving weekend. I would start after Thanksgiving. Because I said, I just need a little bit of time to find a place to live. Because what it was Miss White didn't want to break her contract with the school. So she was going to stay and finish out and work until the school got out for the summer. And then she would move with me to Arizona. So that's why ended up moving. I lived 6 months by myself in Arizona. So I came with my parents over Veterans Day weekend. They went to the NASCAR race. I took their car and I looked up, rooms for rent on Craigslist. And I met a couple guys, and I found this one guy who lived real close to the spring training complex in Goodyear. Super nice guy. I believe his name was Brian. He had a big 2-story house, and he was like, yeah, man, I got a room, and he's like, I work nights. He worked at the airport. I don't know if he was an air traffic controller, but it wasn't Sky Harbor. It was one of the other, regional smaller airports, but he might have been an air traffic controller, whatever he was. And he's like, yeah, I work at night, so you'll probably never see me, except for my days off. And I was like, all right, yeah, and I would get up early to go to work, when it would, we would start, 6, 7 in the morning, whatever it was. And then, so I found this guy. He was super cool. I rented a room from him, and, it was Thanksgiving 2011. I had Thanksgiving with my family on the Thursday, Thanksgiving with Miss White's family on Friday. And Saturday morning, I drove 9 hours to Goodyear, Arizona, and moved into this guy's house, just a little into a room at some random guy's house I met on Craigslist. So, but again, I worked at the Goodyear Spring Training Complex. I just worked there, and it was like a 5-minute drive to work. I worked Tuesdays to Saturdays, and I always had Sundays and Mondays off. And I had a good time. Yet I didn't get the warmest welcome by some of the guys who worked there, but the guys who worked that Tuesday to Saturday with me were super cool. They really were, they really kind of became my friends. And, I was, I would go out with them, and our boss, our foreman, who worked the same schedule as me, the Tuesday and Saturday, he had some money and stuff. And this guy loved to drink. And he would be like, it's Saturday. We just got paid. We're going out after work, boys. And we'd be like, oh man, because he drank like a fish, and he would buy shots. Oh man, he would buy so many shots, and he would be like, he would always show up, and he knew all the bartenders' names and stuff. And he would be like, what's the new flavor of vodka this week? And they'd be like, oh, it's cotton candy. He'd be like, let's get a round of shots for everybody. Like, oh, God. Some of them will be so disgusting. But yeah, he loved to drink. And this is the guy. So we had Sundays off. And he would be like, we're going to go watch football. And you're going with us. I was like, okay. It's like, we're meeting at the sports bar at 10 a.m. The first game starts. I was like, okay. I was like, I looked online, though. It says it opens at 11. They open it at 10 for us. So I was like, okay. So we would go on Sunday to the sports bar, and we would start drinking beer at 10 a.m. and all day watch football. All day till the end of Sunday Night Football. And these guys, or this guy, when you drank with him, he didn't want you to eat. He'd be like, you can't eat because you're going to lose your buzz. Dude, I'd be there all day dude, I'm so hungry, man. I haven't eaten anything. I'm going to order some. You can't order food. I'm like, dude, I have to eat, man. I'm going to die. But yeah, it would be 10 to 10, 12 hours at the sports bar watching football. And he loved to bet on sports. He would always want to play he would always do the squares and, oh, let's bet on this team or that team. And oh man, he was a good time. But then what happens is we get to the summer, and it's time for Miss White to move out. She had loaded everything up in a trailer. My parents had a trailer, so they loaded everything up. She had a little time to do that, and I had found a house to rent that was, again, in Goodyear. I think the rent was $900 a month, which at the time was not. That was about right. Now you couldn't find anything for $900 a month. That's people just laugh at you. But it was in Goodyear. It was still close to the spring training complex, and Miss White had found a teaching job in Goodyear. Also, she came out during her spring break and did some interviews, and she got hired on for the next school year and everything already. So, but again, we both didn't make a lot of money, and I I have the feeling that, I mean, Miss White, I mean, she had to come to Arizona, right? Because I moved us there. But she kind of drug her feet a little bit. I don't think she necessarily really wanted to move, but she knew that she didn't really have a choice. But she kind of drug her feet on it a little bit. I always kind of suspected that maybe she kind of resented me for it a little bit, that I made her move, because she would always say things like, well, if I was still at the school I was teaching in California, I'd be making $80,000 right now, blah, blah, blah. Because she had to take a pay cut to move to Arizona because they don't pay their teachers as much. There's not like the big, strong teachers union like California. But I knew in the long run, for me, and I think for the family, that this was the right choice. And we didn't really necessarily like living in California. And I absolutely love it here in the Phoenix area. So, but she moves out. I just went to like this realtor. I just walked in, and like these ladies were all having lunch, and I was like, hi, I'm looking for a place to rent. They were like, this one lady was like, I'll help you, and she's like, well, let's meet tomorrow, and I got some houses. I'll find you a place, So that's what I did, and I can't remember what her name was, but yeah, I found this place, and got accepted to rent this house, and it was a nice little house, actually. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. But I said there were some that I went and looked at. I was like, this just feels like an apartment. I don't want to feel like I live in an apartment. I want it to kind of feel like a house. So this one had like the master bedroom was not in the same hallway as the kids' bedrooms and all that stuff. So I was like, oh, this is a cool house. It was nice and open, and it was cool. It was a really nice house, actually. The air conditioner did not work very well, but that's okay. And so I moved in to this house. It was like beginning of June 2012. Yeah. So it was like June 1st, moved into this house, and I didn't have anything. I think I had a mattress. I had a folding chair, like one of those folding like TV trays, and that thing, I had my TV. I think that was about it. I literally, I might not even had a mattress. I don't even remember. I had like blankets, and I slept on the floor for a couple weeks, and ate off the floor and did all that. So my wife and kids showed up. So what happens? I got a one-way ticket. I flew back to Fresno. My parents picked me up at the airport, and then we drove all night. We went all night, and my dad drove the trailer, and I drove the wife's car, and everything else that was packed in it, and we left for Arizona, and we haven't looked back. So then again, this is middle of June, 2012. So quickly, when we moved to Arizona, again, we did not make a lot of money. We struggled very, very hard. At the time, Miss White was kind of in charge of the finances. It was kind of a little bit more separate because I had some bills to pay, and I would make sure that there was money and, just enough for her to pay things and for me to pay my bills, and I had to find deposits and do all these things, right? But we did not make a lot of money. We struggled really bad when we moved here, and it was tough. It was really tough. I mean, we weren't ever rich before by any means, but they say, oh, the cost of living is less in Arizona. It is, but they don't make as much here. You don't make as much money here either. So it kind of equals out. We struggled really bad. We struggled to keep the lights on a lot of times, and had to make a lot of choices. I sold the truck that I had to get rid of the car payments, and I bought like a paid cash. It was like a 99 Dodge Durango, and the AC didn't work, and the windows didn't roll up. And this is another funny story that reminds me of cars. So while I was in Arizona by myself, and Miss White was still back, I went to a baseball game. This is the story. I went to a baseball game because it was Chipper Jones's last year, and this was the last time I was going to get to see him play, because I used to go down to watch the Dodgers and the Braves play in L.A., and we would always go for the Braves-Dodgers series. But this time I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go see Chipper. I got like a super cheap ticket, and I went, and I'm getting these text messages and from Miss White, and then she's like, oh, your father went with me and I bought a new car today. And I was like, okay, well, great. That's an added expense that I wasn't exactly, but I didn't really know this was happening until like, yep. And your dad went with me to make sure I got a good deal and I bought a new car. I was like, okay. So she bought a new car. She always had a very nice car. And I had I think it was like a 2009 Ford F-150. It was like blue and stuff. But again, sold it to CarMax to get rid of that payment so we could kind of afford. Bought the Durango for cash. Yeah, it was it. I mean, I got the job done. I didn't have to drive very far, but it was not a nice car. Let's put it that way. Again, I just think it's another. It's just one of those things. To me, it's like no big deal. I think back on it now, where it's like, oh yeah, I did make that sacrifice. I did. I could have been like, no, I'm keeping my car, and I want a nice car, and I don't want to have to bend over to get the car seat out, and blah, 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 whatever it is, But I did. It was like, this is for my family, getting rid of the truck, getting rid of that car payment. I'll drive a piece of shit to, help support my family, to help us get by and things like that. Those are things that dads do, and sometimes you get credit for it, sometimes you don't. But then we're here, and we kind of talk about, me and Miss White, that, we wanted to have a second kid. So it was kind of like, well, let's get this done. We had our jobs. We're like, we have our jobs. We have a home. Let's do this. So we decided that we're going to have another child, and the plan was always 2, and that was it. And it didn't take us very long. I've been told that I have super swimmers, so we didn't have to try too many times, and she was pregnant, and we were off and running with the second one. Now, we were kind of hoping for a girl at the time, because we wanted just have the boy girl, but when we found out that it was a boy, I was just as happy. I didn't really care. Maybe Miss White was just a little disappointed. I think just because we wanted the boy girl combo, but we had 2 boys, and that pretty much almost sealed it for my mom to have all boys for her grandchildren that she cursed us all with. It's one of those things when you're growing up as a kid and your mom's like, I hope you have children just like you someday. Well, she cursed us and she got it. All of her grandchildren are boys. So, but we did have both pregnancies went pretty well. I have to kind of tell you that pregnancy is obviously it's very difficult for the woman. It ain't a walk in the park for the guy either. People always say like, oh, the guy, you don't have to carry the baby, blah, blah, blah. But like you have body transformations and emotions and fears and just, that are not easy to deal with either. And we found but we had a good doctor this time. She was a super nice lady, and much nicer than the old, I forgot the one that was always obsessed about how much she weighed and would berate her and stuff. But we had a nice, good doctor. She was real cool. She was real nice. I remember when Miss White went into labor with Maverick, she was like, she woke me up in the middle of the night, and she was kind of like, oh, like, keep having, like these pains, And I was like, well, are you timing them? Like, that's what you're supposed to do. She's like, well, I guess maybe they're like every 10 minutes or so. And I was like, yeah, we should probably get up and head down to the hospital. If you're having 10 minutes, your retractions are 10 minutes apart, whatever it was. Yeah, we should probably, at least start getting ready here, get some stuff. And what the problem was that this was Labor Day weekend, and we didn't really we had people lined up to watch Brody, because Brody is, almost 3. He turns 3 in, 2 weeks, But it was Labor Day weekend, and all those people were out of town. They're like, we're not in town. We're out of town. We can't watch Brody. So we ended up, some teacher that Miss White knew who lived in Goodyear, was like, well, I'll watch them. So I drove, Brody over to some stranger's house, some lady and, some guy and dude or some lady and guy I never met before. Said, here's my son. I'm going to go have a baby right now. I hope he's here when I get back, And, so, but we went to the hospital and we get there. It's like 4:00 in the morning or something. Maybe not even that early. It was like, maybe it's like 1 a.m. or something, And, we get there and Miss White's like, yeah, I'm definitely having contractions. I'm like, okay. So we get into like the triage and the nurse is like, okay, yeah, you're having contractions. All right, let's check you. And she's like, you're at like a 4. Like, you're going to have to do some walking, Missy, And Miss White was like not happy about that. She did not want to walk. And she was like, I'm having contractions, and she's like, well, you're only at a 4. I don't know what to tell you, So I'm like, okay, well, let's just go walk a little bit. So we go in the hallway. She's walking a little bit. And Mrs. White is obviously, at the time I was like, she was just upset because the lady told her she wanted to go walk and she didn't want to walk. But she was like having a lot of, she was like leaning up against the wall. And she's like, oh, it hurts, And I'm like, well, I forgot the camera. Let me go out. I'm going to go grab the camera. Okay. So I'm just like, okay, go out, grab the camera from the car. I walk back and she's back in the triage room. She was like, fuck you, dude. I'm going back. And then, so I go back in there and she's like, it's getting worse. It's getting worse, And I'm like, okay. I'll get the nurse. So then the nurse finally comes in and, what happened? Okay. I remember now. Okay. So what happens is, Miss White's like, get the nurse. This is like, it's really painful. I don't know what's, and I was like, okay. But they had just rushed somebody off to go have a baby. It was like, they were like, ran down the hallway and I was like, oh, there they go. And then when one of them came back and I was like, oh, hey, Miss White, she's really, freaking out in there. And so she's like, okay. She's like, I'm sorry, we just had this lady was having a baby right now. We had to take her down to her room. So she comes in, she's like, well, let me check her. And, it feels like it was like 30 minutes ago when she told us to go walk. Yeah, we like walked out to the hallway. I went to the car, got the camera, came back, and we were back into the room. And then, we're there and we hear them rush the other lady off to go have a baby. So we're sitting there, nurse comes in, and then she checks and she's like, I just see her eyes explode. And she goes, I don't remember what she called, or what she said. She's like, she's at an 8 or a 9. And she just like, I see her eyes just like, and she just turns and yells, call Dr. Rosario right now, And so they called our doctor and it was like, okay, you got to get rushed off too. You're having a baby right now. So I do give credit to Miss White. She was not lying. She was literally having a baby. She went from a 4 to an 8 in like 30 minutes. And so they rushed us off too, just like the lady I just saw get rushed off. So it's like, and this is literally like you see it in the movies. Okay. We're like running. As we're running, they're like, put your arms up, put the robe on and go wash your hands. And then we'll put the gloves on you. And, like, it's like, it's crazy. So we get to the room, boom, put her in. They're getting all the stuff ready. Hey, you're the father. Okay. Come out in the hallway. Yeah. You gotta put these booties on your shoes. Okay. Wash your hands. Okay. Put the robe on. And as I'm out there doing all this stuff and they're like, putting the thing on my head and all that stuff, I see our doctor, like a movie, slide on her feet as she comes around the corner because she's sprinting and then she's trying to make the turn to turn down the hallway to come to us. She slides like, whee, like her shoes squeal and she hits the wall and then she's like full sprint. And there was another doctor. It was going to be okay because the other doctor who just delivered the other lady's baby who just got rushed off, she came out and was like, okay, I'm ready to go just in case, but Dr. Rosario, she's like sprinting. And then again, it's like a movie, they like put the robes on and the gloves and her eye or her glasses and the thing over her hair, like all these things, like, and it's like chaos. It's like, it's happening. Oh my God. But for Brody's, birth, I was there and I was like holding Miss White's hand and breathe. And, I was like, a little more involved. This one, it was like, get out of the way, dude. There was a lot of like, it was like the scene from Talladega. Like, I was like, I don't know what to do with my hands. I'm just standing here and everyone's running around. And, I remember her water broke and it like burst, like, boom, and I was like, oh my God. And then, baby comes out and the baby has the umbilical cord wrapped around, his neck. The doctor looks at me and I'm like, oh my God. Miss White doesn't know any of this is going on. She's just like, doing her thing. And, but Maverick, our little baby, he turned out to be totally fine. I think they don't really spank him anymore. They like rub their feet. They like rub the bottom of their feet real hard and then they start crying, and he was totally fine, cleaned him up, and that was it. So that was how Maverick was born. Yeah, that's the Maverick story. But I think that's where we'll leave off. We'll start next time on the next Who Am I series. It's going to get a little bit more talking about probably my relationship with my ex-wife and stuff, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit more. But now we're getting a little more closer to caught up. Both my kids are born. We're in Arizona, and we'll catch you on the flip side on the next episode. Thank you for listening. This podcast is exclusively on Spotify, and till next time, see ya.